In this episode of the Rockfit Files, I sit down with Desiree Lotz, who is all about vitamins and, well, living healthy. She's got a lot to offer, and I hope you enjoy this conversation we had like I did. Just tell me right off the get-go, how long have you been in, I'll say, health and fitness, in the wellness industry? What got you inspired to follow this path?
It's more than 40 years. In fact, probably about 45 years about. So I know I'm quite a few miles ahead of you in age.
Not too much, I guarantee it, but that's okay.
And basically what happened was just before I fell pregnant with my first daughter, who is now 44, I found this nutritionist, even in all that distance away in South Africa. I found this nutritionist, Adele Davis. Do you know about her?
I've heard about Adele, yes.
Yeah, she was a phenomenal, and I wasn't falling pregnant and various things. And I first found her book, Let's Get Well. And then I found her book, Let's Have Healthy Children, and so on. And then I really learned that vitamin E, for example, will inhibit the hormonal function, so you won't maybe won't fall pregnant. And there were other factors that led up to that. And then when I was going into labor, or about a month or so before, she says that you must increase your vitamin E so that your oxygen levels in your body are adequate. So let's say if you deliver the baby and the cord is around its neck, the chance of survival is so much more, because there's oxygen in the baby's bloodstream from the oxygen that it gets from you, from the vitamin E.
I see.
So there's lots of, that's how I started.
And because you had such positive benefits in your experience, you decided to share that with others. And
Yep.
that's, you started to do more research in the field of nutrition, vitamins, and other kinds of supplements, I imagine.
Well, you know what? I was born in South Africa, and we didn't eat out. We didn't even have McDonald's and all that stuff. We really lived a basic life, but there were obviously just some missing gaps with regards to my body, and I guess many others. And so I filled those gaps, and then the next thing I knew, I was pregnant. And then, so I've been using that data for many years, and then about 30 years ago, I became this detox specialist. And that program is vitamins, and you have to, there's certain things that the people have to take. They have to eat salads and stuff. So it was like also exempt, advanced that and expanded on what my experience was. And then I came to America, and then I found Dr. Royal Lee. I don't know if you know who he is.
No, please tell me more.
He was the founder of the Standard Process supplements, which many chiropractors sell in their practices, a Standard Process. And he was a dentist, actually. And I've got a lot of his research material. This guy was a genius. And still to today, also, I use his data and share it with people. So I do muscle testing.
Applied kinesiology, yeah.
Yes, I do that.
Yeah.
So I help people with that. But the interesting thing that I found for all these years, and I worked in a chiropractic office, and I went to train on this muscle testing and all. The thing that I found is that most of the doctors that I dealt with, they do not test for dehydration. And that's a huge factor. And
interesting.
Yeah, I started, my book is not finished. I've got to change it. There's a lot of stuff to fix on dehydration. And so I usually ask people like you and all kinds of people, I ask them, can drinking water dehydrate you?
Oh, yeah, if you have too much, of course. Yes.
Yeah, it's a Goldilocks, I would say. There's this one, too much, too little, but somewhere in between. In fact, we have ourselves in our restroom, as funny as it is, or we've had in the past a pee chart, which shows the color of your
Oh,
urine.
yeah.
And so you can match up to see if you're nicely hydrated or dehydrated. And that's one kind of little thing that people can use. It's kind of a fun little chart. Every time you go and use the restroom, you can check, do I need to get some more water in me or not? Or
Yeah.
yes. Yes,
Yeah.
tell me more though,
But that's
because a lot of people probably don't know that.
Yeah, but here's the answer to the question, because drinking water can dehydrate you. Whether you drink this amount or this amount or this amount, it can dehydrate you. And here's why. Because if you drink, you pee. You drink, you pee. Blah, 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 and it goes on. And when you pee, you're losing more and more minerals.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a key factor. If you got minerals, if you're getting the minerals in along with the water, you're good. Because then the body, because what happens is, if you take a dry sponge and you hold it under the faucet and the water just goes straight through it, that's kind of like the human body. If you drink it, it goes straight through you. So, but if you have the minerals in it, it actually absorbs it into your cells and into where your body needs it.
Now, do the minerals have to be based on the individual, or is it a general kind of a recipe, shall we say?
Yeah, each one is different, but generally speaking, so I'll just cover what I do is this is not what's in the bottle. This is just my drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put Celtic sea salt in it.
Celtic sea salt.
And why do I do that? Because there's at least 80 minerals in this. Plus it's got iodine because it comes from the sea. And these are vital minerals. Your thyroid needs iodine and the body needs all these other minerals. And so you basically can absorb and get hydrated. Whereas otherwise.
Why don't we just drink seawater then? What's the difference?
Now that's the perfect idea. So here, this is seawater.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, that's seawater. And I used to have my office was close to a location down here where a lot of people came to see me. And there was one lady from France. She wasn't allowed to go into a specific building in the area because her blood pressure was so high. And she came to see me, and I do the muscle testing, and there's a point on top of the head here where the fontanelle is.
Yes. The sutures, yeah.
Yeah, so I use that point to test. So if I test and your arm goes down, then it tells me you're dehydrated. And I can tell you now, 99% of people I test are dehydrated. So she needed in order to fix that dehydration factor, she needed 8 of these seawater. So she called her doctor in France and he said, no, you can't take that. It's salt and your blood pressure and blah, blah. He went off at her but she didn't listen to him. She listened to me. The next day, her blood pressure was way down and she could go into that building. So this is, I mean, if you look at the dehydration symptoms, and I'll send you a link to that, you'll see there's about almost 40 symptoms. And those symptoms are common symptoms that people get put on all kinds of medications for, but it's not necessary. If they're dehydrated, they just have to fix that.
And now, how does that affect your pH balance?
If you're having your pH ideally, your blood pH should be around the between 7 and 8. But your pH in your gut should be 2. So your balance is, you're going to measure it on that kind of mid-range. And that's why the CalMag, my product, the CalMag, I got to try to find a way to say it's a calcium and a magnesium. Calcium is your most abundant mineral. Magnesium is the next most abundant. And the correct way to have it is 2 parts of calcium to 1 part of magnesium.
Yeah, without one another, they wouldn't readily absorb into the system, as I understand it.
Right. And if you're deficient in, let's say, magnesium, and you drink calcium, you're going to get more deficient in magnesium, because calcium is going to pull the magnesium out of your body. And vice versa, if you're low on calcium and you take magnesium and you're low on calcium, it's going to pull the calcium out your bones and all over, so that it gets that body balance thing, that the body has its clever way of doing all those things. So, so the minerals to keep the body in proper balance, that's kind of like the minerals you would need, like the Celtic sea salt and the CalMag is like your major. Now your body's electrical current is created by the minerals. So if you get the idea of electricity coming into your house and it's all working good, you can use your computer, you can talk to me on here, and the lights are working, everything's good. But the minute there's interference, you get a flickering. And that flickering is kind of interference. So in various degrees, you have this kind of interference. In the worst case scenario, you'll have a blackout, which is compared to body death. And the body operates exactly the same way, but the electrical current is created by the minerals. So your central nervous system is sitting here in your skull. So in order for the message to go from here to all the different parts, your glands, your organs, and every part of your body, it needs to have the electrical current working well. So if you, let's say your current is not working well, you're deficient, and you go and touch the hot stove, the message from here to the finger and from the finger back is going, or from the finger to the head and then, to the brain and then back again, is going to be slow. And because of that, you're going to actually burn your finger. If your electrical current is working well and you touch that stove, you'll jump back. So in athletics and all these different things, your reaction time is dependent on your electrical current of your body. So if your electrical current is good, you are snap and pop and you grab that ball. Or I saw you talking about soccer. I didn't realize that I'm from a soccer country.
You certainly are.
Anyway, but all these reactions, like if you step out in the road and there's a car coming, if you're deficient, your delay or you can actually get knocked over. But if your electrical current is good, you'll snap back and jump out of the way.
So then what about the foods that people select? The average American diet being what it is, let's just take average American diet, not plant-based, not whole organic food, but just the average people are going to fast food restaurants. They eat out quite a bit. They get their food delivered. How is that affecting their mineral balance in their body, and for that matter, their pH balance?
A lot, very, very a lot. And all of that, what you just described, is bad for the body, because all those refined carbohydrates and sugars and blah, they convert to sugar in the body, and that has a major negative effect on your moods, all kinds of things. And from my research over the years is, if you take a plant growing, let's say in your garden, the plant pulls minerals from the soil to be tasty. So that plant is tasty. And then the cow or the sheep comes along and eats it, and then we eat the animal. And it should be tasty. And when I first came to America, I could not believe the terrible taste of the food. Because, and it's like, and it took me quite a few years to discover, besides the GMO, which is obviously very, very destructive, the soil is so depleted of minerals that it doesn't have those minerals in it any longer. It doesn't matter whether it's organic or all that stuff, the soil is deficient in minerals. And if you go up in the old days, if you go up into the springs and you go up into the waterfalls and those places, that water should have like a live taste. It should be like a life. You feel that life. it's so kind of dead in the water.
So the obvious answer in terms of a diet would be whole organic food that is really rich in minerals and vitamins. But
Yeah.
as it stands, the American diet is lacking those things. So now, just like gyms are allowing supplemental activity to a population that's very sedentary, you have products that are supplementary because they're not being found in the average diet. Is that accurate?
Yeah, very accurate. And the salt as well is so, because even the food grown in the organic food and all that, obviously, which is much better, I'm convinced that soil is also depleted because it's all subjected to the same deterioration is probably the best word.
So that's good, because that was going to be my next question. If you've got, say, a plant-based, whole organic food life, that's your dietary choice, you're still going to need vitamins and minerals supplemented into your diet.
You're right. Just because of the major deficiency of these things, and it's like your minerals are your key, because before the body can function at all, it needs the minerals. So just to give you an example, a heartbeat. So the heart goes like this, and then it goes like this, and it goes like this, and it goes like this. So it contracts it and relaxes. So this is, I'm going to just talk about the calcium, magnesium for right now. Calcium does this, and magnesium does this.
Relax.
And even colic in babies and constipation, all these things. If you get the idea of a worm, it pulls like this. This is how I try to describe the colic. And then it goes like this. And in order to do this, which is your intestines, it needs the minerals.
So would you say then a colicky child might do better with a little bit more magnesium in their balance?
Calcium, no, CalMag, the full-blown thing.
Calcium
and
to
magnesium.
Create contraction? Oh, so just a balance is really where you're going.
It's like your heart. You need to contract and relax, and those two minerals do that, plus the salt with all its minerals in it. They're all vital for the body to function efficiently, but the calcium and the magnesium are vital for the body to function at all. And regardless of if you're constipated or whatever the problem is, or colic, you need both of those to do the job, because you will find even that probably those people are deficient in calcium as well, because the body's got it's a very clever mechanism. If you have enough calcium and you got a bit over and you've got more than you need, if you've got the right form of calcium, that's another very important point. What it will do is it will deposit in the bones as a reserve. And with magnesium, if you've got too much, it will deposit in its different glands and organs as a reserve. But if you're using the wrong form of these things, it's just going to, for example, calcium carbonate is really seriously bad, because it will deposit in your kidneys and all over in your body, and even behind the eyes and different places, and cause eye problems and so on. So the right form of these products are also very important. Now, calcium glucinate, just to give you an interesting relative, calcium glucinate is the most potent painkiller. It's more potent than morphine, which is obviously a good thing, but it's not known because Big Pharma is not going to let you know that. So basically, it's a very potent painkiller. When I went into labor 36 years ago with my son, I had, in those days, I wasn't making the instant one. We were using the original form with, it had apple cider vinegar, but I drank like 1.5 liters of that CalMag when I went into labor. You know how much pain I had?
I'm going to say very little.
Zero. I had zero pain. It was such an interesting experience, because, I mean, who goes into labor? You've got 2 kids, so you know. You've probably seen your wife.
Yes, I've gone into labor a number of times now. and just because I was holding my wife's hand, you know.
Yeah, I totally understand. So basically, and And Dr. Roy Lee talks about this too, about calcium gluconate, and he explains about why two forms of calcium that are good for you, the gluconate and lactate, but not the other. But the gluconate is a potent, powerful painkiller. So anybody who's got suffering any pain or stuff like that, the CalMag will help. And there's a AAA Hall of Famer from up your part of the world there. His name is, they call him Pork Chop. I don't know if you've heard of him, Brian Golnick. I don't know if he's still.
Not sure.
He's in the AAA Hall of Fame. He had a grade 3 concussion, and it affected. I mean, obviously, it affected him physically really badly, but it also affected him mentally because he couldn't play, and all the horrible things that go along with your sport, and that's your game in life. And so his coach gave him a bottle of the CalMag, and he drank it, and he did his own little, what do you call those tests where you placebo tests?
Yes.
He didn't. But first of all, it handled the pain. Secondly, he came out of it. And thirdly, the emotions involved with it were gone. And he used to have restless leg and battle to sleep. All of those things went away on the CalMag.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, I've got a cool testimonial from him, but it's like, it's that important for the body to have that ability to go into action and do whatever it has to do. And obviously sports is a major area.
Now, how is it that, based on the size of a body, would there be greater or lesser requirements? And if you had too much, does the body just find a way to create a homeostasis on its own and expel the extra vitamins and minerals?
Yeah, the body is very clever, and if you've had too much of it, you might end up in the toilet a bit more than you expect. So it could loosen your bowels a bit more than your normal. But everybody finds their happy medium. So I take 2 doses a day. I take one in the morning and one at night. There's some people that just take some at night. There's some people that take it several times a day. It just depends on each, because our bodies are different and our lifestyles are different. So basically, it would go according to your body and your lifestyle.
Gotcha. Now I'm curious, kind of come back around to applied kinesiology, muscle testing as it's also known, and I am familiar with it too, and from time to time we'll use it. But are you using like Chinese meridians? Are you using the acupuncture points? Are you using how is it that you're determining it? You already told me that you place your hand upon the top of the head. Are there other locations, and how else do you utilize it?
Okay, well, I've got a whole bunch of information on it, and from when I was working with the chiros and going to do my training, there are different points. So, for example, the calcium point is
up on your left cheekbone.
Yes, and then the magnesium point is here,
further out to the side of the left cheekbone toward the ear. Yeah,
that's right. And then, like for example, obviously I check the thyroid, and I check the kidneys, and I check the hormonal points, and some of them are probably just direct meridian points, but I've got all the meridian data. So if I want to check something and I can look into that, then the vitamin E, vitamin C, the adrenals, generally speaking, are tested here.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you're looking more than just what their calcium or magnesium levels are, and for that matter, whether they're dehydrated or their salt levels. But so you're looking at a whole spectrum of vitamins and minerals.
Yep. And then I've got on my website too a program which basically comes from Adele Davis. Mostly it's got brewer's yeast and stuff like that in it, and I've got that on my site as well as how to build a healthy body. And that formula is just amazing, because that's what I had when I was pregnant. Was pretty much, I've kind of adapted it a bit now when I was pregnant with my kids and breastfeeding and all that stuff, because it's so powerful. And the brewer's yeast, non-GMO of course, is loaded with B vitamins, all in balance with each other. So
what do you mean by that? What in balance with each other?
So a lot of people will take a B complex that they buy that's got 25 B1, 25 B3, 25 blah, blah, blah. That's not balance. Balance is how it comes in nature, and it'll be in varying degrees. Each one has its own requirement. So the brewer's yeast is for me the most powerful source of B vitamins. And I test people on all these different issues, and then I test them to see if that program is going to work for them. I test them on the individual ingredients. And then
please keep going.
Yeah. And then there's another whole topic, which I won't discuss today because probably it would be a different subject, is on this detox program. When you are losing weight or when you're losing weight, for example, you are detoxing. And when you detox, this is what happens. The body is clever and it can offload. Let's say, I'll use this example that I always use when I'm talking to people like you, just so that people understand, not you, but the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you go to the pub with your wife and you're both getting drunk. And there's a guy over there and he's flirting with your wife and starting to do what's not supposed to do. And you get mad with him and you punch him and he punches you and you get into a fight and like bang each other around. So now what happens is you go home, the next day you're sober again. So you're kind of over it. But then let's say a couple of days later, you're working or you're doing whatever, exercise or something, and your blood sugar is low because you haven't eaten or you have had a lot of pressure, whatever. Mm-hmm. So now what happens is your blood sugar goes down and so your energy and you so what happens is the body pulls energy from the fat. So here's what happens. The alcohol particles that you got in the night before, the body can offload some of those, but it can't offload all of them. So the body's got a very clever mechanism. It coats it in fat, the leftover particles, and deposits it in the fatty tissue. So now you've got this hunger thing at work and you're feeling and your blood sugar's going like this, and it's pulling energy from the fat in the fatty tissue. So it pulls out these fat particles, and they just so happen to have a leftover alcohol, some of the alcohol particles in there, and they get released into your bloodstream. Now you get all mad with your wife again, and you're all angry, and you go home and you're like, kind of thing. And this is what drugs and toxins do. They come out of the fat and they hit the bloodstream again. So then they affect you mentally as well as physically. And that's the major reason why this detox program is to get all these particles, whether it's chemicals or whether it's drugs or whatever it is, get it out of the system.
Well, I'm curious because, and I don't mind talking about detoxification right now, because if you are detoxing and getting these elements, say, out of the fat cells or elsewhere in the body, it must go through your bloodstream, wouldn't it, in order to come out? So wouldn't you exhibit those same type of behaviors when you're detoxing?
Yes. So this is where I wanted to go on this. So if you're doing like, I've got a weight loss health coach who private labels my product and puts her clients on there. And what happens is, with all this unpleasant reactions, and sometimes you might get bloated or whatever the physical discomforts are, the CalMag helps get the person through that. So instead of giving up and stopping the weight loss thing or whatever, they can help themselves through it by having the things that help the physical discomforts. And that's what CalMag's is one of the major aspects of that. It calms you down, makes you feel a bit better and stuff, so your body can detox, lose weight, and you can continue. So we all have this thing. So whatever chemicals or drugs, if somebody used to smoke marijuana or there's so many, or had OxyContin and so got you know, all that horrible stuff in their bodies. When it comes out, the discomfort of it can be very unpleasant.
Yeah, I imagine. And not just what we put into our bodies, but the environment that surrounds us also can toxify us, correct? I mean, it's in
Completely.
yeah, in Northern California, one of the biggest things here is black mold. We're a
Oh,
temperate rainforest, and so a lot of homes. So anytime you're buying or selling or looking at moving in, you want to get it inspected for mold because it's kind of like the silent killers, as they say it.
I
And
actually heard
so,
that. I heard that yesterday or the
yeah,
day before from somebody from there. Yeah.
yeah, so there's detoxification programs for mold itself, and then of course you got dental work where you've had
Oh,
metal fillings, and
mm,
whether it's silver or whatnot, mercury
mm,
and other kind of soft metals. There's the chelation program and detoxification for that. So
yeah,
it goes right along the lines of that, from the sounds of it. And
yep.
so but it's a process, isn't it? How long, on average? Of course, it all depends on how toxic a body is, but when do you start to see the effects? Is it immediate? Does it take a little bit of time, weeks, months? What are we saying?
To see the effects of the toxins. You mean to?
Uh, yeah, of removing the toxins and seeing a much more beneficial
Okay, so
life.
that particular program is a 3 to 4 week program, generally speaking. It's done in under you. You don't do it on your own. You do it in a specific environment so that you are, because you have to be the person. Somebody has to be watching you and making sure. Because when somebody's on those programs, anything that gets stirred up from the past, which could be anything, it could be depression, it could be anger, it could be, you name it. You can only imagine all the different reactions. There has to be somebody taking care of that, so that that is actually done under guidance. But if you just detoxing generally with sort of other detox things, or just eating a better diet, just to push yourself through that, you can help yourself gently.
That's interesting. I'm imagining that there is an element of intense perspiration, because that will help to bring toxins out through the pores of the body. I know
Mm,
myself. I've experienced Native American sweat lodge, and to that effect, you have Swedish saunas, and now we've got hot yoga and rooms where people go in, and the temperature's over 100 degrees,
mm,
and they're trying to really not only put on a good sweat, but there's this euphoria that you feel coming out of that.
mm.
Um, I imagine that's probably part of your detox program, right? Is some
You're right.
type of sauna or whatnot.
Yeah, you have to I don't recommend that people do that type of thing without doing it under the guidance of somebody who's trained to observe and notice these different reactions, because it can be dangerous for a person.
What kind of reactions are you talking
You
about?
can get all kinds of reactions. You can faint, you can pass out, you can be very, very emotional. I mean, it's just, you can only imagine, the reactions are just a gazillion.
Sure.
And let's say, like the story I told you about your wife, the guy flirting with your wife, just that alone, if the person is running that out, he's going to get angry and whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, it has to be done under guidance.
Now, speaking of guidance, there's also medical guidance, but I understand that the amount of time medical students spend in studying nutrition and vitamins is very minimal
Two
in
weeks,
medical
2 weeks.
school. That's right. It's
Yeah, my cousin was a doctor. Yeah.
2 weeks, 2 weeks out of so many years of
Yes.
studying, and that's all they study. It's very similar to biomechanics, to be honest. They don't really look at how the body moves. It's more other information. So I can only imagine the trouble you have constantly run into with medical professionals
Hmm.
who are also kind of overseeing some of your clients as patients. Is that something that you commonly run into?
Well, I mean, I do know about that. I'm not generally speaking, but I know about it. And the problem here is big pharma funds the training at the universities and stuff. So they are promoting their I don't want to get into that subject because I'll start going off.
Oh
Get
yeah,
into a
no,
rant.
I can't detox you from afar here, so we'll keep
Yeah.
those emotions at bay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, oh my gosh, it's like insane. So they 2 weeks out of all those years of training, and they don't know anything about how the body works actually. So if you got headache, you go to, or blood pressure, you go to the doctor, they put you on blah blah, or you've got pain. Like there's a gold medal, what do you call it? He was an Olympic gold medalist. He's a customer of mine up in Canada, and he had an accident and he ended up in hospital, and they put him on OxyContin. His life went to hell in a handbasket. He had this OxyContin, was like he had to have it. And I think we've got him off 100% now, but I couldn't do the detox because I'm down here and he's up there. But he gradually followed my direction on it and just gradually reduced it. But that OxyContin is so violently horrible and dangerous. It's so addictive. And this is what they do. They put you on that type of thing instead of finding out what's causing the problem and finding out what your body needs nutritionally, or what is it deficient? Is it deficient in calcium? Is it deficient in vitamin A, or whatever? You find out what's going on, and then you correct that. And then once you corrected that, you gradually help the person. But you're not going to get that. There are some good doctors that do the right thing, but a lot of them are trained by Big Pharma.
I hear you, Desiree. So, in a nutshell, if we could, what are the top culprits for reducing levels of vitamins and minerals in a person's body? What, if you could, to the listening audience, say, avoid these 3 things, what would they be?
Okay, sugar, refined carbohydrates, things like Gatorade and all those things, I wouldn't go near them because they are toxic, high loaded with sugar. But if you can just get those, and what I've found is very often people crave sugar, and I've been through that myself. But I found that when I go onto the nutrition program and I have enough of the brewer's yeast, it's very interesting because what it does is there's a point that I test on the gut, and I test the B vitamins. I use the tongue to test the brewer's yeast helps to kill off the bad bacteria in the gut, and it builds the good bacteria. But
does fermented foods do that too?
The fermented foods are good as well. Okay. I haven't checked on that from that point of view, but I would say yes, that would be a good, like this bottle of mine. I have like kombucha and stuff, because those things they've got the good mother. Yeah. Yes. So that will help. But what I've noticed is when people start to go on to, let's say, the brewer's yeast and that program, then there can be discomfort initially because the body's killing off the bad bacteria. So the weeds, as I call it. So when that happens, you can be bloated or have physical like discomfort, like pain or stuff. And the whole trick of this thing is cut back on the formula and keep going. And then take enzymes or something to help to break down those reactions, and then push your way through it. And then eventually what will happen is the good bacteria will take over.
Now, there's a big push in recent years on bone broth. And of course, whenever it becomes popular, there's a demand, and there's always a company that will mass manufacture bone broth. So I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about homemade bone broth, the real thing. Is that up there in your top 20 of things you want to go for?
Oh yeah, I used to make the bone broth for my kids when they were babies as well. That's kind of the part of their food that I gave. My kids never had any junk, never. And they had CalMag when they were babies from the day they were born. And you know something? They never cried. I never knew when they were teething. And the only time I knew they were teething if I put my finger in. And
No kidding.
no, slept like babies and all that. And the bone broth was very much a key part of that.
Wonderful.
Mm.
And any other kind of, as we're coming to, I won't say a close, but as we're getting into the final minutes here, though, what other kind of advice would you say to the listening audience that they would really want to, not so much avoid, but what could you add into your life? Obviously, the products that you have with the CalMag and the sea salt that you spoke of earlier. What are the things? And bone broth you just mentioned. Are there other kind of top answers that they would want to focus on?
And then if you look at the, which I'll send you the link to it, how to build a healthy body. In that formula, those things they can get at good quality health food stores. You know what I mean? As long as you're getting non-GMO. Part of that formula is, you hear about people with high cholesterol.
Yes.
This is like a big business. That's big business. Yeah. But high cholesterol, what happens is the cholesterol buildup is all these particles that are depositing on the side of the arteries and all over and throughout the blood system. What works for that and what helps that is lecithin. It's an emulsifier.
Yes.
Yeah, so they put it when they make chocolate, good quality, decent chocolate is high in lecithin and all that. Because what it does is it breaks down the particles and it emulsifies them.
So between water and oil, it will blend them together rather than separate.
Okay. Yeah. So this is oil and water. Okay. And this is oil and water with lecithin. Exactly the same stuff, but with lecithin. So it emulsifies and it becomes like, because oil is bigger particle than water.
Yes.
And so if you put the lecithin in it, emulsified, they even use lecithin to make paint because the paint is loaded with particles. And in order to get the paint on your wall smooth and pretty and all that, they use lecithin.
Okay, I'm not going to go home and start licking my walls just for that. I think I'll just, where else can I find it?
If you do, just take some pictures so I can see. You can find it at any decent health food store and just make sure it's non-GMO. The soy lecithin is the most common one, but sunflower lecithin and egg lecithin is also. Now, isn't it interesting? They warn you against eggs when you've got high cholesterol, and yet it is vital. You need it.
And we need the cholesterol for hormone production too. But
yeah,
too much of anything is not a good thing.
But you don't want it to be stuck and solid and particle. You want it to be emulsified, and that's all you need. Is just
beautiful.
To have it. Yeah.
So Desiree, you mentioned your book. It's going to be coming out. So when do you imagine it being released? Next year?
I was hoping this year, but it's not going to be this year. Probably next year. Yeah.
And the working title as it is now?
I'm not exactly sure if it's going to change, but it might go along the lines of drinking water. Can drinking water dehydrate you, or something along those lines, or how it works, dehydration. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. I'm going to have to survey.
No problem. Well, I will put a whole bunch of contact information in the description of the podcast so people can go to your website. And if you send me the other link in terms of living a healthier life, that would be wonderful. We'll make sure people do. But if people want to get a hold of you or find out more information, where can they go?
They can go my email address. You can Desiree, as it is showing on your thingy there, Desiree at calmag-c.com. So CALMAG-c.com. And I'm happy to help people anytime, and there's no obligation to buy anything from me. But I'll also send you some examples of athletes who've had big benefit from the CalMag.
Very good. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for taking a little time out to have a conversation with me. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, that's it for another episode of the RockFit Files. Hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to tune in next week when we have another guest, and be sure to subscribe. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, Rocky_Snyder, and check out Desiree's line of products and, more importantly, the information she shares. Have a great one.